his childhood was not that happy because he lost his parents at an early age and he had to suffer an unhappy childhood. In the name of urbanization, we are destroying the nature to the core and we are making it more of a concrete world than the green natural world. We are so much occupied with the worldly matters or with the materialistic world that we don't have time to spend with the nature and be closer to the nature. Hello everyone, myself Bishobarani, faculty in English, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence in MYSURU, heartily welcome you for my session 1 of first Sem BCom English. I'm going to start this session with the second poem of Unit 1 called The World is Too Much with Us by William Wordsworth. So before I move on to this poem, which is written by William Wordsworth, before I explain the analysis of each and every line of this wonderful poem called The World is Too Much with Us, let me brief up about the poet who has written this wonderful poem called William Wordsworth. So, what are all the important things I'm going to cover in this particular session? I'm going to discuss about the poet, a brief insight of the poet, then introduction, that is, what is this poem all about? So this poem, what is the main theme of this poem and what does the poet wants to convey through this poem to the human mankind, and the importance of nature, how it is so important to the human beings. The next, the annotation of the poem, that is the analysis of each and every line of the poem. And I'll end it up with a summary. The World is Too Much with Us by William Wordsworth is a Petrarchan sonnet, which is an Italian sonnet with 14 lines, where 8 lines have been divided into an octave and the remaining last 6 lines into a sestet. So this is a Petrarchan sonnet by William Wordsworth. So before I move on to this, the main lines of the poem, let me discuss about a brief insight of this wonderful poet called William Wordsworth. So William Wordsworth from 1770 to 1850 is considered one of the pioneers of romantic poetry. So he's one of the pioneer of romantic poetry. He's very much famous for writing romantic poems. He was born in Cockermouth in West Cumberland. He lost his parents early in life and suffered an unhappy childhood. See, here we get to know that his childhood was not that happy because he lost his parents at an early age and he had to suffer an unhappy childhood. He spent his happiest days of his life in the Lake District, which figures frequently in his poetry. So most of his days were spent in this particular place called Lake District, and he tries to emphasize this place in almost all the poems what he has written. The publication of the poetry collection Lyrical Ballads in 1798, co-written with S.T. Coleridge, heralded a new literary, cultural and artistic movement, particularly Romanticism. I told you he was a romantic poet and he's one of the pioneers of the romantic poetry. So he's known for his literary, cultural and artistic movement that is called Romanticism. You can see the poet here in this picture. He's none other than William Wordsworth. Moving on to more about this poet, he was a strong advocate of using the language of the common people in poetry. See, that is the uniqueness of William Wordsworth's poetry. He uses simple language so that it can reach even the common man and it is understandable by the common man. That is the uniqueness of this great poet called William Wordsworth. He was a strong advocate of using the language of the common people in poetry. Romantic poetry is marked by deep love for nature. Here, romanticism means it's a love between a girl and a boy. Here, romantic poetry is marked by deep love for nature. He loves nature, and I think whenever we love nature, we know how happy we feel about this beautiful nature. Strong imagination, concept of the sublime, supernatural element, and reaction against conventionalism. So, here this is the very uniqueness of his poetry, where he tries to focus more on the nature and how human mankind is disconnected with the nature day by day due to industrialization, and we are moving away from nature and we are more towards the materialistic world. This has made us to move away from this beautiful nature, get disconnected with nature, and lose the sanctity of this very beautiful nature. Wordsworth defines poetry as the breadth and finer spirit of all knowledge. So we know that, so according to Wordsworth, he defines poetry as what? The breadth and finer spirit of all knowledge. The World is Too Much With Us is a sonnet composed in 1802. As I said, this is a Petrarchan sonnet with 14 lines, and the first 8 lines is divided into an octave and the last 6 lines into a sestet. In it, that is in this poem called The World Is Too Much With Us, William Wordsworth criticizes the loss of human contact with nature and the overall obsession with materialism. We are very much obsessed with materialistic world. We are more towards materialism, but that is the reason why we are getting day by day disconnected with the beautiful nature. We spend more time with our gadgets, but we don't have time to spend with the nature. That means we are getting disconnected with this beautiful nature. That is what the poet want to emphasize in this very wonderful poem called The World Is Too Much With Us. Right? Next, moving on to the next, that is, the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century shifted the dynamics towards decadent materialism and cynicism. Here, the poem presents the conflict between spiritual versus materialistic values. So, when we, particularly the aesthetic values, what we get when we are closer to the nature is something different when we are closer with the materialistic world. So, when we get connected with the nature, we have that spiritual mentality, and that is how we are going to experience the beauty of the nature. The poet angrily declares that human beings are out of tune. See, we are going out of the way, getting disconnected, being away from nature. Every beauty and blessings the nature has to offer. We all know how much the nature offers to human mankind in almost all ways. The benefits, we are benefited by this beautiful nature, but in return, what are we giving to the beautiful nature? We are exploiting the nature in the name of industrialization, in the name of urbanization. We are moving away and away from nature. We see many people move away from the natural environment to urban areas to earn their lively bread. Yes, but of course, we should not get disconnected with the nature. That is what the poet wants to say in this poem. And like a typical romantic poem, it celebrates the healing power of nature and regrets the shift of human culture into the rat race of getting and spending. Yes, we are so very materialistic and buying materials, and we are so obsessed with the materials that we feel, and most of the time we are spending time with the materials, but we are not spending time with the beautiful nature where we get the happiness. Of course, when we go for a long ride and when we see the beautiful scenery and the beautiful waterfalls, and when we are closer to the nature, the amount of happiness what we get is something which is not expressible, and the only we can feel the happiness when we are in close contact with the nature than with the materialistic world. Like nowadays, we have been in the rat race from morning to evening. We are busy with our work and we don't have time to spend time with the nature. Like even we don't have time to go for a walk where we go in a park or in a natural environment and enjoy the beauty of nature. Nowadays, nobody has the time to even see the sunrise and even experience the morning sun rays and the beautiful environment. The mornings really look so very beautiful when we go for a walk. All that experiences we are losing because we are more towards the materialistic world. So like a typical romantic poem, it celebrates the healing power of nature and regrets the shift of human culture into the rat race of getting and spending. With many references to paganism, the poet creates images of returning to nature that would heal human beings. So like Paganism is like going back to the old, they are the Greek gods who really worshipped nature. So we feel like we have to go back to the ancient times where people gave more importance to nature than to the materialistic world. The world is too much with us, and let me move on to the poem, that is the lines of the poem, The World is Too Much with Us by William Wordsworth. That was the brief insight of William Wordsworth. And what was the theme of this poem that is written by this great poet called William Wordsworth? That is, we are getting, mankind is getting disconnected with nature, and we are moving away and away from nature and becoming more and more materialistic. That is the main theme of this poem. So what are the lines of this wonderful poem called The World is Too Much with Us? Let me read out the poem. As I said, this is a Petrarchan sonnet with 14 lines, where the first 8 lines is called as a, see here you can see the first 8 lines is called as octave, and the last 6 lines, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is called as sestet. So this is a Petrarchan sonnet with 14 lines, where the first 8 lines make an octave and the last 6 lines make a sestet. So let me read out the lines first and then later go on to the analysis or annotation of the lines of this poem called The World is Too Much with Us. The world is too much with us, late and soon. Getting and spending, we lay waste our powers. Little we see in nature that is ours. We have given our hearts away, a sordid boon. This sea that bears her bosom to the moon, the winds that will be howling at all hours, and are upgathered now like sleeping flowers. For this, for everything, we are out of tune. It moves us not, great God. I'd rather be a pagan, suckled in a creed outown. So might I, standing on this pleasant lea, have glimpses that would make me less lonely. Have sight of the Proteus, that is a Greek god, rising from the sea, or hear the Triton blow his wreathed horn. See how beautifully these lines are said by this wonderful poet called William Wordsworth. The lines itself will tell us like how we are moved away from nature, how it shows the disharmony, the disharmony between the nature and the human beings. So we are more towards materialistic world. We are having more obsession towards the materials. These are the lines of this wonderful poem called The World is Too Much with Us. So let me move on to the analysis of the lines of this poem called The World is Too Much with Us, line by line. Before I move on to the lines, let me discuss as to what the poet wants to tell in this poem. So what are these lines according to the poet? William Wordsworth's sonnet, The World is Too Much with Us, composed in 1802 and published in 1807. So this sonnet was composed in 1802 and published in 1807, is a passionate critic of the industrial and materialistic society of his time. So imagine at that time only, like people were more towards materials and more industries were coming up, and that was also a reason why people were moving away from nature and more towards materialistic world. Through this sonnet, what does Wordsworth want to convey? Wordsworth comments the loss of humanity's connection with nature because of industrialization, because we are disconnected with the nature. So he says the loss of humanity's connection with the nature due to the overwhelming focus on material wealth and industrial progress. Yes, of course, industrialization is very important for the growth of the country, but that doesn't mean to say that you have to harm the nature and grow in that manner. So we have to retain the nature to its core and then allow the industries to come up. So through this sonnet, Wordsworth laments the loss of humanity's connection with nature due to the overwhelming focus on material. So we have a lot of focus on material wealth, but we are least bothered about protecting and conserving the beautiful nature which gives us everything in our everyday life and industrial progress. The poem is both a protest against the encroaching industrialism. So this poem literally says that we have to go against industrialization. It means The poem is both a protest. Protest means we are doing a protest against encroaching industrialization. So day by day, in the name of industrialization, in the name of urbanization, we are destroying the nature to the core, and we are making it more of a concrete world than the green natural world. So and a plea means a request for a simpler, more nature connected way of life. So however busy we are, however we are too connected to the materials, but we should have some time to get connected with the nature. We have to spend some time with the nature. That is what the poet wants to convey through this poem. The world is too much with us. Next, let me move on to the analysis or annotation of line 1 and 2. The world is too much with us, late and soon. Getting and spending, we lay waste our powers. So this poem itself opens with a powerful statement about the excessive influence of the material world on human lives. The world is too much with us. See, the poem opens with a powerful statement stating what? We have been excessively influenced by what? Materialistic world, and particularly we as human beings have more connectivity towards the materialistic world and moving away from nature. The world is too much with us. The world is too much with us suggests that people are overly preoccupied with worldly matters. We are so much occupied with the worldly matters or with the materialistic world that we don't have time to spend with the nature and be closer to the nature. The world is too much with us. Means worldly pleasures are more important for nowadays for a human beings than getting connected with the nature. Though we know how important this nature is for us and what are the benefits we are getting through this nature, and we cannot survive without nature, all this we know, but yet we try to move away from the nature and get connected to the worldly pleasures, particularly the materialistic world. So the world is too much with us suggests what? That people are overly preoccupied with the worldly matters. Wordsworth criticizes the focus on getting and spending. So what does he mean by getting and spending? Indicating that society is consumed by the acquisition and expenditure of material. We have time to spend more on materialistic world, but do we have the time to take care of nature, grow more plants, take care of it every day? No, we don't have time for that, but we have time to spend our time, most of the time, to the materialistic world. I think nowadays we know we are more towards gadgets, and we are more toward, yes, of course, we have advanced in terms of science and technology is of course very important for the well-being of human mankind at this particular scenario, but that doesn't mean that we have to be away from nature. Retaining all that, we have to go on with the beautiful nature. This obsession, he argues, causes people to lay waste our powers. See here, getting and spending, we lay waste our powers. So getting and spending means what? Indicating that society is consumed by we are completely occupied, and by what? Expenditure of material wealth. We are more towards spending of material wealth, more towards materialistic, more towards industries, coming out with big products, good products, everything. But of course, that is also important. But at the same time, what are we doing? We are spending most of the time with the materialistic world. This obsession means we are completely preoccupied by the materialistic world, argues, causes people to lay waste our powers, meaning that it diminishes their potential for deeper, more meaningful engagements with life and nature. So we don't have that much of time to meaningful engagements with life and nature. We don't, of course, nature gives us so much of knowledge, and we learn a lot of things from the nature, but yet we don't go for it. We try to be more with the materials, and in that materialistic world, in a concrete jungle, we try to spend most of the time. But when we go for a forest, or even for a safari, or maybe when we take children to a forest or to a park, imagine the amount of happiness a child gets when it is with the natural environment. Not only children, we ourselves feel so happy and relished to see such beautiful nature than spending most of the time in the four walls of the house. Lines 3 and 4. Little we see in nature, that is ours, we have given our hearts away. See, little we see in nature, that is ours. We have given our hearts away. Wonderful lines of this poem. See, what does these lines express? These lines express the idea that humans have lost their connection to the nature. Little we see in nature, that is ours. So like, we don't have time to spend time with the nature, so we feel that nothing is there in our nature, so we don't have anything to do with the nature. Little we see in nature, that is ours. So what does this particular line, little we see in nature that is ours, suggest, implies that people no longer find a sense of belonging or personal connection in the natural. We have more a tendency towards our belongings. We feel that mobile is mine, my laptop is mine, this desktop is mine, all that. We have more obsession towards our material belongings, but we never even think or have a thought that nature is ours. Though we know nature is the one which is giving us everything in life, yet we don't have that belongingness to the nature. We never even say that this nature is mine. So that shows, that itself shows man how greedy he is. So he wants everything, all the benefits from the nature. He never wants to believe that nature is ours. The phrase, we have given our hearts away, that means we have given our hearts towards the materialist world. We are away from nature, suggests a voluntary surrender of emotional and spiritual ties to nature. Means, we don't have that much of belongingness to the nature, and we have voluntarily given up that. It is, see, we have given our hearts away, means we don't even have that sense of belongingness to the nature. So whatever is in nature is not mine. My things are my belongings, what I have with me, what I use in my everyday life, that is my things, but not the nature. So never think that when we grow a plant, that is mine, I have to take care of it, I have to nurture it. Nobody has that feeling of belongingness to the nature. Wordsworth calls this exchange a sordid boon. See here, this is an oxymoron, which is an opposite word. A sordid means selfish, boon means reward. See, it is like both an opposite word. So oxymoron, that conveys the paradox of gaining material wealth at the cost of something far more precious, our relationship with nature. So it is like, in return of materialistic belonging, we are destroying nature. So at the cost of something far more precious. See, our relationship with nature is going away from everybody. Like, we feel that the things what we have, the industries that are coming up, are the ultimate for human beings on this planet Earth. So we never even have that much of presence of mind to think of this beautiful nature, conserve it, preserve it, and forever. And that is the reason why nowadays the natural environment is destroyed to the core due to human activities, maybe, and the causes for the destruction of this beautiful nature is all human activities, like pollution. It may be air pollution, water pollution, soil pollution, sound pollution, etc. So man to the core, and man is a greedy person, and in order to fulfill his wants, he started destroying the nature. So all that is being depicted in this poem. Like, we are more away from the nature, and we are more towards the materialistic world. Lines 5 and 8. This sea that bears her bosom to the moon. Bosom means chest. This sea that bears her bosom to the moon, the winds that will be howling at all us. Howling means making sound, and are upgathered now like sleeping flowers. For this, for everything, we are out of tune. See how beautiful these lines are. Here, what does Wordsworth tries to personify? Wordsworth personifies natural elements to emphasize their beauty and power. Of course, the beauty, what the natural elements have, is something beyond explanation. Nature itself is filled with beauty and power. So when this nature is having so much of potential energy and beauty, but we are not ready to relish the beauty and power or the potential of the nature. So here Wordsworth personifies natural elements to emphasize their beauty and power. So what does this sea? The sea bears her bosom to the moon, creating a vivid image of the sea's intimate relationship with the moon. So particularly sometimes we see when the reflection of the moon falls on the water, how beautiful it looks. The moonlight, the light of the moon falls, and the image of the moon falls on the water. How beautiful that scenic beauty is. So the sea bears her bosom to the moon. So when the reflection of the moon falls on the water of the sea, creating a vivid image of sea's intimate relationship with the moon. See how beautiful this line is. When the image or the reflection of the moon and the moonlight falls on the water of the sea, it shows how close the sea water and the moon is. But we, as human beings, are not able to understand this intimate relationship with the moon. The winds described as howling at all hours. See, when we see the wind blowing, sometimes we feel howling at all hours, are portrayed as constant and powerful force. All of us know how powerful the wind is. So the wind, when it blows, the force with which the wind blows is so very powerful that it can destroy anything. And at the same time, how nicely it is going to help us out. So the winds described as howling at all hours are portrayed as constant and powerful force. So wind is something which is more powerful. The metaphor, up gathered now like sleeping flowers, suggests a moment of calm and potential energy. So here that is up gathered, and are up gathered now like sleeping flowers suggests a moment of calm and potential energy. You can see sometimes the whole night will be so very calm, and it shows how the natural environment is even in the night. Despite these wonders, the poet laments, we are out of tune. Though we know nature itself is something which is wonderful. We know all this. As human beings, we know everything. That, it is a part and parcel of our life. Environment is something which we cannot live without it. And we know that in spite of it, but we don't have time to spend time with the nature. So the poet laments, comments, we are out of tune. Means this phrase, what does this out of tune suggest according to the poet? This phrase suggests a disconnection. Out of tune means we are totally disconnected, or disharmony between humanity and the natural world. So we are totally disconnected with nature. Why? Because we are more towards materialistic world, more towards industrialization. So we don't have time to spend the beautiful time with the nature. Moving on to lines 9 and 10. It moves us not, great God. I'd rather be a pagan, suckled in a creed outworn. So here, what does this line imply according to William Wordsworth? Wordsworth expresses his frustration and despair over humanity's indifference to nature. Yes, of course, we are very, very selfish people. Human beings are selfish to the core. In order to fulfill their wants, or in order to fulfill their needs, we start destroying the nature to the core. So Wordsworth expresses it moves us not. Though we know we are destroying nature, we are not moved by it. So his frustration and despair over humanity's indifference to nature, it moves us not, indicates that people are no longer moved or inspired by the natural world. Though we are closer to the nature in everyday life, but yet we don't understand the importance of this beautiful nature, and it is not going to change our mindset. So if something, when there is a natural calamity, at that point of time we understand. And I think we as human beings cannot go against nature. Knowing all this, yet what does it mean by it moves us not? Indicates that people are no longer moved or inspired by the natural world. The exclamation. So here the poet exclamates, oh great God. Great God signifies his deep anguish. So he says, great God, we know everything. We know in and out of how we are benefited by this beautiful nature, and what the nature gives us, not only the aesthetic value, the amount of benefits we are benefited by nature, and the beautiful scenery what we get from the beautiful nature. And it is like a place or a dwelling place for both the human beings as well the animals. We all know all that. We do know all that importance of the nature, but yet we don't have time to spend with the nature. So great God signifies his deep anguish. Though we know all this, but yes, of course, we are not connected with the nature. In his desperation, so he is very desperate and says that he declares that he would rather be a pagan. Pagan means the Greek god who were worshipping the nature. In a creed outworn, a pagan suckled in a creed outworn. By this, what does he mean by a pagan suckled in a creed outworn? By this, he means that he would prefer to follow an ancient, obsolete religion that worships nature rather than live in a society that disregards it. So he feels that he would like to worship whom he would prefer to follow an ancient, obsolete religion who worship nature than live in a society who does not respect it, disregard it. So I don't want to live in such a society who are least bothered about the nature, who give least respect to the nature and who is away from nature. Instead of that, I would like to follow a pagan, means an ancient, obsolete religion. Lines 11 and 14, that is the last 4 lines of the poem. So might I, standing on this pleasantly, pleasantly means grass meadow, have glimpses that would make me less forlorn. Forlorn means alone. Have sight of Proteus rising from the sea, or hear old Triton blow his wreath horn. See how beautifully these lines are written by the poet William Wordsworth. So might I, standing on this pleasantly, have glimpses that would make me less forlorn, have sight of Proteus rising from the sea, or hear old Triton blow his wreath horn. So, what does this final lines imply according to William Wordsworth? So, in the final lines, Wordsworth imagines a scenario where he, as a pagan, that is, the ancient Greek gods who used to worship nature, could stand on a pleasantly. Pleasantly means a grass meadow, and find solace in nature, find happiness in nature. He longs for glimpses that would make me less forlorn. Indicate, what does this line? So might I, standing on this pleasantly, have glimpses that would make me less forlorn. So pleasantly means grass meadow, and find solace in, and make me less forlorn means that when you are with the nature, you will find that happiness. He longs for glimpses that would make me less forlorn, indicating that connecting with nature could elevate his sense of desolation, that we don't feel that we are out of the box. We feel that there is somebody to take care of us, somebody along with us. The poet wishes to see Proteus rising from the sea and hear old Triton blow his wreathed horn. So, what does this line mean? Have sight of Proteus rising from the sea, or hear old Triton blow his wreathed horn. Proteus and Triton are sea gods according to Greek mythology, as I said, symbolizing the ancient and mystical connection to nature that Wordsworth wishes for. So he wants to rather to follow an ancient Greek god who worship nature than being in the society who disregards it. These mythological figures represent a time when people revered and found profound meaning in the natural world. So according to Wordsworth, Proteus and Triton, these two mythological figures, Greek mythological figures, represent what? A time when people revered and found profound meaning in the natural world. So this whole poem, which is a Petrarchan sonnet of 14 lines with 8 lines put together as an octave, and the last 6 lines as assisted, according to William Wordsworth, is nothing but showing the disconnection of human mankind with nature and more towards the materialistic world. Due to industrialization, due to advancement in technology, we are more obsessed with the materialistic world than with the nature. So let me have the conclusion of this poem, The World is Too Much With Us, by William Wordsworth. The World is Too Much With Us is a passionate critic of the industrial and materialistic society of Wordsworth's time. So during his time only people were more towards materialistic, and more industries were coming up and were moving away from nature. Through vivid imagery, personification and references to mythology, Wordsworth laments the loss of humanity's connection to nature and criticizes the societal focus on material world. So in this poem he has given a lot of explanation about how we as human beings are away from nature and how we are more towards the materialistic world. And he has given the examples of 2 Greek mythological Greek gods who were worshipping nature. So all that shows the loss of humanity's connection to nature and criticizes the societal focus on material wealth. The poem concludes with a yearning for a return. Yearning means wish for a return to a simpler, more nature-connected existence. So Wordsworth wants people to get more connected to nature than to the materialistic world. Yes, of course, materialistic world is also important, but at the same time, we should make sure that we are also connected with nature, and getting connected or obsessed with the material world all alone is not good for human mankind. Symbolized by the ancient pagan reverence for the natural world. Wordsworth's sonnet remains a powerful reminder of the importance of maintaining a harmonious relationship with nature in the face of modernity's encroachment. See how nice the last lines of this conclusion of the poem is. Wordsworth's sonnet remains a powerful reminder. So this whole poem itself is like it is giving an alarm to human mankind that we are moving away and away from nature and giving least respect to nature, and we are more towards mysterious world, but we don't understand the importance of maintaining a harmonious relationship with nature in the face of course, in the modern world we are going more towards industrialization, more towards progress, and more towards materialistic wealth, but at the same time we have to maintain a harmonious relationship with the nature, which is everything for human mankind. Hope you all have understood this wonderful poem, The World is Too Much with Us by William Wordsworth. Thank you.